Imagine a continent just completely torn apart. For more than 20 years, Europe had been just rocked by revolution and then totally redrawn by one guy, Napoleon Bonaparte. But after he was defeated, Europe's leaders had this monumental task in front of them. The stage was set for a political showdown like no other, as they tried to put an entire continent back together again. I mean, seriously, think about that question. How do you rebuild an entire continent? This was the colossal challenge on everyone's mind back in 1814. And we're not just talking about rebuilding cities. We're talking about shattered governments, borders that have been completely erased, and these dangerous new ideas about liberty and nationalism that were just spreading like wildfire. The old rulebook? Gone. So what were they going to replace it with? Well, their answer was a meeting. But not just any meeting. This was a grand, unprecedented gathering of kings, diplomats, and princes, all descending on Vienna. Their goal was nothing less than designing a new European order from the ashes of the old one, an order that they hoped could guarantee stability and, more than anything, prevent another Napoleon from ever rising again. To really get what they were up against, we have to understand the sheer chaos they inherited. This wasn't just some cleanup job. Europe was hitting the reset button on its entire system.
I mean, the problems they were facing were just staggering. You had decades of continent-wide war. Borders that had stood for centuries, poof, gone, replaced by whatever Napoleon felt like drawing on the map. And maybe the most dangerous thing of all were these revolutionary ideas of liberalism. You know, the idea that people, not kings, should rule. For the old guard, this was the source of all the chaos, and their challenge was to somehow put a lid on all of it.
So who were the people tasked with this impossible job? Let's call them the architects of the new Europe. And they weren't just redrawing lines on a map, they were designing a system that they hoped would last for 100 years. Now what's really fascinating here is that their main goal wasn't to punish France. Nope, it was to restore balance. And they all had this powerful, shared belief system to guide them. That ideology was conservatism, and it was going to be the bedrock of every single decision they made. The key decisions were really made by the four big powers that had defeated Napoleon, known as the Quadruple Alliance. And the undisputed leader of the whole thing, the chief architect, was the brilliant and deeply conservative Austrian foreign minister, Clemens von Metternich. His vision was going to shape Europe for the next 30 years. So what did conservatism actually mean to these guys? Well, it was a direct reaction against everything the French Revolution stood for. They believed that tradition, monarchy, and organized religion were the absolute pillars of a stable society. To them, change was dangerous, and revolution was basically the ultimate political sin.
And this is so important. This wasn't just some vague feeling. It was a practical playbook. Step 1, bring back the old powers, the kings, the nobles, the church. Step 2, enforce what they called legitimacy, which basically meant putting the royal families that Napoleon had kicked out right back on their thrones. And Step 3, actively crush dangerous new ideas like liberalism, which they were convinced led straight to chaos and the guillotine.
Okay, so with this conservative playbook in hand, how did these architects actually go about designing their new Europe? Let's look at the blueprint and see how they built this new map of the continent. Their first huge decision was what to do about the defeated enemy, France. Now, the easy path would have been revenge, just dismember the country and humiliate them. But Metternich and the others were way smarter than that. They understood that a bitter, broken France would just become the source of the next war. Their solution? Not punishment, but containment. And this shows their strategy perfectly. They decided to literally build a stronger fence around France. So, they gave Prussia valuable land on the Rhine frontier to act as a guard dog. And up north, they mashed Holland and Belgium together to create the powerful Kingdom of the Netherlands. The whole idea was to surround France with strong buffer states that could block any future aggression before it started. But redrawing the map was only step 1. To make this new order last, they needed a system to maintain that delicate balance of power. And this led to their most innovative creation, a brand new way of handling international relations. They called it the Concert of Europe. Think of it like an agreement among the big players to act together or in concert to keep the peace. So whenever a crisis popped up, the great powers would meet up to find a diplomatic solution. It was really an early attempt at collective security, designed to stop any one country from going rogue and messing things up for everyone else. So let's see how this all came together. The Quadruple Alliance, right? It wasn't just a military pact. It was like a self-appointed board of directors for Europe. Their first order of business? Putting those legitimate rulers back on their thrones, starting with the Bourbons in France.
This was their way of shouting from the rooftops, "The revolution is over." And then, to contain France, they built that physical barrier, that diplomatic fortress, by creating the Kingdom of the Netherlands right on its northern border. Every single move was a calculated play to reinforce this new, conservative order.
So, the million-dollar question. Did it work? Well, on the surface, the Congress of Vienna was a stunning success. But as we're about to see, the peace it created was built on a foundation of some serious pressure.
For 50 years after the Congress of Vienna, there were no major, continent-wide wars between the great powers of Europe. Now, after centuries of constant conflict, this was an almost unheard-of achievement. The system, in that very real sense, worked beautifully.
But here's the catch. Here is the central tension of the Congress's legacy. It succeeded in creating peace between countries, but it did that by suppressing the desires of the people within those countries. The architects of Vienna were terrified of liberalism and another new, powerful idea, nationalism.
This quote just nails the problem. When the architects redrew the map, they paid zero attention to the people actually living there. They were just moving pieces on a chessboard, not thinking about different cultures or languages. So Poles were handed over to Russia, Italians were put under Austrian control, and Belgians were forced into a union with the Dutch. They weren't building nations, they were building a pressure cooker.
In the heat under that pressure cooker, it came from these two unstoppable ideas: nationalism, this powerful belief that a people, a nation, should have its own country, and liberalism, the demand for constitutions, for rights, for a say in your own government. The Congress of Vienna could put kings back on thrones, but it couldn't erase a shared identity. In fact, by trying to suppress these ideas, they might have just made them stronger, setting the stage for the explosive revolutions that would sweep Europe later in the century.
And this brings us to the ultimate paradox of the Congress of Vienna. They built a system that was designed to create lasting peace, but it had the seeds of its own destruction built right in. By ignoring the will of the people, they created a peace that was both a remarkable achievement and a ticking time bomb. It forces us to ask a question that's still relevant today. Can a peace that relies on suppression ever truly be called stable?